Susanne here from the Project Manager Clinic, and we've got another webinar today on a pretty interesting subject, I think, something that everybody's talking about. Or certainly people are talking about their career, and if you visit LinkedIn like I'm always doing, then you'll know that this is a subject that people are quite concerned about. So just before I lead in and introduce our speakers, we're talking today about future-proofing your project management career specifically, but we might just talk generally more about other careers because things are changing quite a bit in the workforce anyway. This will be recorded and go to the YouTube channel for anybody that will join us. It will be available there as well, and all of those details will be in the links when I upload it. So I've got two fantastic people, Brendan Nielsen and Cassandra Cassandra. And I'm going to throw to you, Brendan, to give us a quick overview of your experience and a little bit about you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne, and g'day, Cassandra. So Brendan Nielsen's my name, Managing Director, Principal Engineer at JC Engineers. JC Engineers is about 9 years old, and I've been in the civil construction and building industry for around about 16, 17 years now. So project managing for the majority of that time, and the majority of that has been out on site.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. Cassandra?
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My area is around organizational development and leadership. So a lot of it's around the people and the processes that organizations use, especially when it comes to change, whether that's personal change or, organizational change or social change. So for me, coming into this talk, I'm really fascinated to hear and talk about the resilience that people have in their lives, and that includes their careers.
Look, absolutely. That's a really good point because more and more people are going to need to be resilient. And I've always thought as a project manager, resilience is a thing. Resilience, tenacity, make a really good project manager in my book. But mostly if you talk to people outside of the field, they'll go, oh, aren't you people really organised? Project managers, aren't they really organised? Bit boring people. Well, maybe that's how it was in the past, but it's not like that now. And maybe we can build this discussion in about resilience generally, because as I mentioned, going onto LinkedIn, the amount of people that are out of work, particularly project managers or senior executive or people, the overqualified, right, that are out of work, the resilience of some of these people starts to wane, and we're seeing that, after 8 or 9 months of being out of work. So, Cassandra, are we building resilience into workplaces? Is this something that we're talking to people about? Do you think, when we're encouraging people to go through their career or their career planning just in their workplace?
I think it's a topic that comes up quite a lot. I think the challenge is less whether or not people are aware of it. It's not about the awareness. It's not about, people saying it. It's like there's a lot of wellness movement going on in the workplace as well. However, there's a huge difference between talking the talk and building, right? You can talk about eating well, but you have to eat well. You can talk about mental health, you can talk about wellness, you can talk about well-being, you can talk about resilience. But are we actually supporting people to become resilient? And are those people given the right space and time to become resilient, right? And then there's even this part that's beyond resilience. So resilience is just your ability to bounce back from something that's gone bad. There's an entirely another step that is around, well, how do you grow from adversity? That's not bouncing, that's building on. So you need to even seek out discomfort and adversity in order to grow, right? And bring it along your pathway, as opposed to just, oh, well, it happened to me and I can get back on track. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's, and Brendan, I'll talk to you in a minute, but just on that, that building resilience and going past that into not just how you bounce back, but you know, really building it in. So a friend of mine is in the film and television industry, and she is a intimacy coach, right? So she's often on film sets, and I don't know if you two probably don't know, but I did professional theatre back in the day, right? And her and I often talk about how things come now to light in terms of harassment and things like that, and particularly sexual harassment. And one of her comments to me was that the younger actors don't have that resilience that we had as, you know, as older actors when we came up through, because there was no diversity training, there was none of that equal opportunity stuff. You know, if you got groped or into trouble, it was really up to you to try and push back, and sadly a lot of people didn't. So what she's finding generally in that industry is that younger people don't have that resilience as a thing. So I don't know whether that is something that is now generational, or whether it's we just haven't seen it because of societal issues. I'm not sure. Brendan, in the building industry, we have a view of engineers and construction people as very, you know, tough and resilient and all of those things. But is that really the thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, resilience isn't about being tough. It's about being prepared, right? So, I mean, you build resilience. You build resilience over time. You get experience. You
Yeah.
diversify yourself, and exactly what Cassandra was saying. You seek out those challenging times, I guess, to be able to gain the experience to know that the next time that something like that does happen, you've been there
Mm,
before. You know about it, right? You build and gain that emotional intelligence, I guess, and yeah, that then allows you to be resilient against any of those challenges that come up.
yeah. Yeah. Look, exactly. In terms of project management, specifically in the construction industry, for example, um, is it a thing where this is recognised now? Is it a little bit more of a environment where people can speak out, where they can say, "Look, I'm concerned about these aspects of my career," or is it a little bit of a closed shop?
No, look, I think it's definitely changed. There is a little bit of that old school mentality. I myself and JC engineers in general, we're an advocate of psychological safety. We want to make sure everyone has a view and they can voice their opinion, and we make sure that they are being heard and valued. And we're trying to push that culture throughout the industry. We are seeing the change. We are
Mm,
seeing that a lot more of that is coming through, but we still do see, particularly with the younger generation, that lack of resilience. That and it's just and you're right. Like I don't know where it comes from, but
mm,
you do see it. And when you do see it, you sort of look at it and you go, oh, where did this start? Your definition of hard or challenging, like we've really got to expand that a little bit, because what you're finding at the moment of being hard or challenging is not hard or challenging. And so
yeah.
it's understanding individuals' perceptions of where those metrics are at, and what does resilient actually mean, and what's challenging, what's difficult to the individual
Yes.
themselves.
Well,
I
there's
would
so much talk about, sorry, there's so much talk about trauma and trauma responses. I don't know if that's
Trauma.
playing into it. Yeah, but anyway, Cassandra, what were you going to say?
I was going to add, I think there's a little bit of a bias. There's a little bit of a survivor bias and an age bias in what you've just said,
Mm,
because resilience comes from experience and it comes from
Correct.
testing, right? So if you have a young person who tests themselves a lot or who has gone through a lot,
yeah,
they've just had more experiences. You have older people who've never had new experiences. You will find that they tend to be less resilient. But because if you've had more decades on the planet, chances are you've statistically been facing more things. And you've got a different life. So it's not that younger people aren't resilient, but you don't know. There is that song that says, I don't know until you've been tested. And and you don't know when you're young and you know it's your first job. You don't know if you're going to survive. You have to believe it. You might fight for it, you might work for it really hard, but you're not sure. Whereas, for example, you know, people who've been made redundant, regardless of how old they are, when they've been made redundant for the 5th time, they're very like, yep, know what I'm doing. It doesn't actually matter their age. It's because they're used to like, oh yeah, I'm so used to, like, yeah, I know what's going on here. I know what I need to do. It's fine. So it's actually around more it's the preparation and the skills, but then also having that ability to actually see which of those work for you. Because theoretically, yes, you can read about them, but again, until you use them and then see, and not all the same tools will work for every person. And so that's the other thing that we sometimes say, and it's good, we have more tools now, right? Before, I think a lot of the tools was stoicism. If you were stoic, hard, tough, you know, you'd make it through. Now that will still work for some people, but it didn't work for some people who are actually quite old now, and then they're just seen as being losers or weak. Now I think what has changed is that there will be a developing and growing set of different tools that can suit different people. So some people who are going to like to talk about it and express it and can express their emotions healthily and want to talk about it, you know, in a group setting, great, that is now socially acceptable. So I think people are going to find different ways of being resilient and that are going to suit them. However, and this is not a generational thing, this is, I think, a now thing. We are starting to come to this world where we shouldn't ever be uncomfortable. We shouldn't ever be in pain. We should always, it's this toxic positivity, toxic happiness that I think is making us believe that we should always be happy, rather than situations happen to us. And whether they're good or bad, you don't actually know, right? So some people, they think something's really, really, like on the face of it could seem really awful or really good. People think that winning the lottery is great. However, statistically, most people who win the lottery end up financially worse off in the end. So it's our perception of whether something is good or bad. And that is a huge part of resilience. It's your perception of time and your perception of what's possible. So if you're the kind of person who's like, oh no, like everything's happening to me, as opposed to what is my empowerment? Where can I take action? Where can I change this to move in a direction I want to move in? That attitude, that mindset. And again, you know, older people sometimes struggle with that because they're not as moldable, right? Kids are very moldable, right? Once you get people who are, especially, you know, over a particular age, if they've had a very stable life, anything that disrupts that stability is actually more confronting. So I don't think it's an age thing. I think there's just certain aspects that we see because of experience.
And look, there's been a lot of social change, hasn't there, you know, with COVID and various other things. And now we're moving into AI. And particularly project management has always been, should I say, procedural. It's been, it's a practice where you're applying certain tools to certain things, you know. So what I've been finding, certainly since I've been doing this channel, is that project managers particularly need to be much more flexible and adaptable to different situations. So not quite that stoicism or that inflexibility where we go, no, it's just got to be this way, it's just got to be that way. But I'm wondering, you know, if we're future-proofing our career, we're doing it ourselves now. We're not necessarily getting help from anywhere. But Brendan, in the construction industry, I don't know too much about where people can go if they're now out of this job and that's been their career for some time. Is there an opportunity for people to have much flexibility in how they develop further things in their career?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think, technology is one of those, obviously.
Hmm.
AI is the big one. AI is the buzz phrase at the moment, I guess.
Yeah.
But AI is a tool. It's how you use that tool. So, you've been doing, project management one particular way for a long period of time, and now you've got to re-enter yourself back into the workforce. I mean, being resilient, you need to be able to pivot and change and
Mm,
not be afraid to have a crack at something. I think there are plenty of modules that are available online, where
mm,
people can research and find how to use these tools to their best to their benefit. Um,
mm,
as an employer, we've got employees from, the youngest is about 22, oldest is 54. So we've got them all through the range, coming from using their hands to now all of a sudden using a computer,
yeah.
and getting that knowledge. And they've got the knowledge, they've got the experience. You just have to get it through the tools and get them utilizing those new scary things where they do things in the background and you don't know what's going on. The computer
Yeah,
did it. So
exactly.
yeah, and I think as an employer, you've got to utilize that. You've got to be able to grab that attitude that Cassandra was talking about. You've got to be able to grab that attitude, go, here's the training tools, here's the opportunity, here's a example, off you go, let's spend the time.
Yeah, because it really is, it seems to me the onus is on us now to build our career. We can't rely on the old things that we used to, career progression would just be fairly natural. That probably hasn't been the case for quite some time. I think most people stay in their jobs now for 18 months to 3 years. So it's completely changed how everything happens. Um, Even looking for jobs now is different. And I'm not just talking about things being digital and online, things like that. It's almost like you are your own business and you've got to network, but network and influence in a different way. It's not just about, in my view, it's not just about I'm going to talk to all of these people. I would think it would have to be a little bit targeted. And Cassandra, I'm going to talk to you about that because influence and building reputation is something that you talk to people about, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you put it a really good way, actually, that now it's like everybody has to sort of be their own business or present themselves in some consulting kind of way, like I can solve your problem.
Yeah.
And it's really understanding who your audiences are, right? Like different people value different things, different employers value different things, different managers value different things, right? Some
Mm,
are looking
mm,
for a collaborative approach, some are looking for just get it done and get it sorted and don't ask me too many questions. And
mm,
I think that's something that often when we are doing our jobs, we are so busy on the action part of our job. I've got to email this person, I've got to go to this meeting, I've got to prepare this thing, I've got to do this report. We forget to remember the story of where that goes after we've done the task. Often it's like, oh, well, I finished that report or I finished this thing. Okay, done, next thing, right? And then we don't know where
yeah.
that report goes. Does it go and make an influence? Does it change anybody's mind? Does it help anybody? Or is it just a report that, collects dust or, sits on a server and no one
Mm,
reads it anymore? And so taking that time to meet with people, to know who you're affecting, right? And then being able to
mm,
gain those stories to be able to see, oh, actually, what I do does matter. And I think that's also where people get disengaged in work. They get so busy with the tasks, they don't know why what they do is important. And then that'll
right.
burnout. So it's the two things. Resilience in your career can also be understanding how you affect on the world. And therefore you've got more like, oh, I actually do something. I'm not just pushing around papers for the sake of it. But then
Yeah.
being able to explain and share that narrative with people and create a compelling story of why what you do is important.
Mm. I think that's a really important point. or points there that, you know, what you do is important, and to follow that story through, is and not just throw it over the fence. And Brendan, you were with me on that webinar about storytelling and project management just recently, which was, you know, again, another skill that we're talking to project managers about. It is building that narrative and building that sphere of influence. I'm just wondering, in engineering, Brendan, do people get an opportunity generally to influence others? And, you know, a lot of times, and certainly in software engineering, my experience have been where people have gone, oh, they're the engineers. And I go, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, you know? And they go, well, you know, they're sort of a bit funny over there. Those, like, and sometimes they are.
We are
they're
a bit
funny in
yeah.
that, but they're very. I always find they're great to work with. Certainly, construction engineers too. Very clear and concise. You know, call a spade, and all of that stuff. But in practice, how are people going to develop that sort of skill in future-proofing their career in your industry, Brendan?
Yeah, look, and I think it's working with people, right? At the end of the day, and we spoke about this on the storytelling webinar as well. Like, you need to align your values, your objectives with your stakeholders and your clients at the end of the day. So, I mean, in terms of influencing the result or the team or whatever it is that you're trying to do, the activity. I mean, as an engineer, you follow codes, you follow principles, so it's very box driven. You know, logic will do this, then that, do this, then that, right? But what if the end result, Cassandra, you know, spoke about it. What if the end result isn't the result that, you know, the client was seeking or the stakeholders were seeking? And, you know, what do you then do? So how do you then come back to your stakeholder, your client, and you go, well, okay, what are the objectives here? Are you trying to build the safest house, or are you trying to build the cheapest house, or are you trying to build the quickest house? Because all three of them will be very, very different. So, you know, you need to understand your stakeholders' objectives. You need to understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, and then communicate that. Tell them a story. Tell them why. Why is it valuable to them to have the safest, the cheapest, or the fastest? Yeah, so I think it's about working with people and understanding them.
So we can't hide. We can't hide anymore, can we? Everyone's out there.
I mean, you can try and sit behind a spreadsheet if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
Won't get very far.
But then there's that potential shock, isn't it, when something happens? What were you going to say, Cassandra?
I was going to say, I think that one of the things around narrative and storytelling is one component of engagement. And these days we are so interconnected, nobody is their own little silo anymore, and nobody's their own little island. So even if you have an Excel sheet, it's an Excel a shared Excel sheet that other people have to understand and be able to work off. So yeah, that it's just one tool. And I think Brendan was bringing up a really good other important point, that actually the other part that people sometimes get a bit like weird about networking is that when you're speaking, it can feel a bit salesy, as opposed to actually a lot of deep engagement is listening. And that deeper listening, not active listening, that's a different thing, but deeper listening and sort of listening to things that aren't being said. And so when we start even moving into future proofing, AI can't figure out something that is not said. Humans can. So sometimes what's going on between the lines and between the words becomes much more important. And that's a key skill I think is going to come up in the future, is what is our ability to interpret and read and take insights from things that are not text.
Yes. We talked about this in another webinar too with the AI, that increasingly project managers particularly will need to become more strategic in their thinking, potentially more advisory, which completely flies in the face of what you think project management is all about. You must be able to, and this is about future-proofing your career, you will need to be able to and analyze information, data, be analytical in your thinking, which not everybody is analytical in their thinking, So AI can, as you're saying, Cassandra, AI can do a lot of things, but it can't necessarily analyze the information, and it certainly can't do anything with nothing. It's got to have something to feed into it. So future-proofing your project management career or your career, we've talked about resilience, adaptability and flexibility. We might talk a little bit more about that in a second. And we've talked about being analytical and networking, so not hiding away, talking with people, storytelling. How does this translate into what do we actually do as we're trying to future-proof? Because it sort of seems like, well, we've got to take more responsibility for our own future, but we also have to talk to people, and we also have to be aware of our own impact on other people. So, and I don't have the answer to this. I'm wondering if the two of you might have. How does that sort of translate into a resume, or how do I build? What is the skill? Is there one, or are they all of them?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I think diversity and diversification is a big one, right? Just because you're, from our side, if you say you're a structural engineer, so just because you're a structural engineer, are you just going to look at steel structures? So what if steel doesn't exist anymore? You're applying the same thing.
Right.
Structural engineering is loads to a material. So learn something about how another material performs. It's about diversifying yourself and going, how can I be the most useful for my employer and my client or whoever that might be for that role? So keep your skills up to date, I think, is the big one.
Yeah, and transferable, being flexible about them, thinking forward. What are my skills and what else can I apply them to? Yeah, well, that's something.
I think the other one in the resume is, I think gone are the days where you have one resume, unfortunately. I think you have one tailored specifically for jobs. And what are they looking for? What is the employer looking for? What is that hiring manager looking for? And being able to tailor it so you can demonstrate how what you do as a structural engineer or, anything else links to what they're trying to achieve. And so that goes back to both your points about being more strategic and what is the purpose? Like, what kind of house are we building? Why? Because client servicing and understanding what a client wants is a skill set, right? And so some of the skill sets is showing those, the technical skill sets, but also the skill sets that leverage on top of the technical skill sets, right? Because, I can build a house, but all right, is it the right house for the right person? Did I solve what was wanted? And did I do that? And we see collaboration being a stronger request on job descriptions and that working across silos and being able, again, to communicate and share technical information, right? You don't have to know what somebody else's speciality is, but you have to understand where they connect. So I think there'll be a lot of, not just training into the depth of a speciality, but also being able to explain that to people who are outside of that speciality will be a very strong skill.
Yeah, I think that's right as well. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the skill of questioning, being able to question, and I don't mean that in a disruptive way, in a pedantic sort of way. It's more being curious about what's going on, even in interviews for jobs. And most people that know me know this, I've had rarely got a job in my entire career through a job interview. Very rarely. I think maybe 2, 3, my whole career. But I've had lots of interviews, and I find what happens in interviews is I tend to interview them. I interview them, right? It's hardly surprising I don't get the jobs. But I do that because I'm used to doing my own thing, running my own race, having my own business. And Brendan, you're probably a bit like this. you sit in front of someone who's a potential customer and you're going to be curious, you're going to question them, ask them questions about how is it working for them and those sorts of things, which a lot of people don't do in my experience. They talk, but they're not curious and they don't take that, the feedback from what they've heard and rejig that around in their head, evaluate it, analyse it, and then push it back out again in a more productive or a productive way that helps them to get more value out of not just their career, but the organisation gets some value out of them. So the other thing that we've talked about recently, or that's very big on LinkedIn, is people being overqualified. And I don't want to talk about people being overage or I don't want to bring those discussions into this one. That's a whole other ballgame. But at the moment, things change quite quickly. So when you could have been in a role and you've progressed through that role as something, that something may not exist anymore in the way that it did exist in the past. But you look, certainly on paper, as someone who's overqualified or very qualified. So if we're thinking about future-proofing our project management career or our career, is this something that we have to think about when we're presenting ourselves? And if it is, how do we mitigate the overqualified label?
I mean, for me as an employer, I've never used the overqualified. I think it's an interesting one because I've been in that box where, you know, earlier in my career, you know, sometimes people come to me and they say, you are actually overqualified for this role. And I go, what does that actually mean? Like, I've got the skills, I've got the knowledge, give me a chance and I can prove it to you. But I think what that label is suggesting that there's a misalignment with what the job description is and what the expectations from the candidate is or are. You know, and that can be around, you know, things like budget. It can be around things like skill set. You know, and it might just be a polite way of suggesting that you're not the right fit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just for this particular role, it's not what we want. I think from an employer point of view, you strategically, you know, you strategically grow. So you're looking for a particular type of person. Maybe it comes down to personality for some people. You look, you know, we've already got a dominant personality over here. We can't have another dominant personality because we've got too many dominant personalities. We're not going to get the result we require. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think there's again sometimes that term is quite loaded. Like, what does that mean? So in sometimes it's a polite way of saying we can't afford you. But if it's not about we can't afford you, like, you know, Brendan was saying, the budget, I think there's, again, like we've been saying, it's around the match. It's like, are you presenting yourself in a way that makes sense for them? Which is, are you not going to get bored in this job? Are you just taking this job and then as soon as you get a better offer, you're gone? You know, I think there's a perspective from the employer around, well, how long is this person going to stay? Are they willing to put up with maybe the fact that we're a bit of a mess and tolerate it? Like somebody who is newer in a thing and trying to break into that will probably tolerate a lot more, let's call it nonsense, to not get too into the weeds about it, a lot more nonsense in figuring it out. Whereas somebody who has been doing it a very long time might say, well, this is ridiculous and rubbish and I couldn't be bothered. I don't have the energy to fix it and build it from scratch. You should have them sorted out already. So I think there are various things that, again, it comes down to your ability to share your story correctly and that you are the right fit both ways. I would even say sometimes it's a good thing because, if you're not particularly interested in working with an organization that has not had the chance to develop its systems yet. Perhaps your expectation that they're going to have that level of maturity is not a place where you want to be or succeed. Again, I think there's probably a little politeness in the term, and that's the problem. It's a loaded term where if you are concerned about being perceived as overqualified, are you talking about the right things? Are you showing attributes that are for the right for what's needed? Is it just someone who is a little bit more like, okay, I'm happy to advise and guide, but I'm not going to get all uppity when it's not this way. I think that sometimes they are concerned about, people who might interrupt.
So I was just going to say on the end there, why can't the employer come back and say, well, we're not ready for you yet?
Exactly. That is exactly right. And as you're saying, Cassandra, it's a very loaded statement, and it's been said to me forever, even when I was in my 30s, right? And it's got actually nothing to do, I don't think, with my overqualification. It's got everything to do with how I seem to intimidate people just by looking at them. I don't even have to open my mouth, right? And I'm only really little. When people meet me in person, they go, so little, Susanne. They always expect me to be taller, right? But that's who I am. I'm not going to apologise for it. And I think what my point is around this is, and following from what you're saying, Cassandra, consider what it might be. If somebody's saying that to you, don't immediately go, oh, it must be my age, oh, it must be this, oh, it must be that. You've got to take your future into your own hands. And that's probably one of the key things that we're talking about today. It's tough, and you will need to be resilient. But if you're consistently getting people saying, I think you're overqualified, and they often don't say it in those terms either, listen to what they're saying and reformulate your approach, just as you would if you own a consulting company. You go back to the client because you've listened. And like I said to you, Cassandra, before we started, I had a consulting company, and I knew that I used to intimidate people. But if something was really bad, really big and bad, they came to me. But then I could put in one of my really nice people just to do the rest of it, right? And then they made people feel more comfortable. Well, that's fine. That's who I am. That's fine. So I guess that what I'm saying is, don't keep banging your head up against a brick wall. Don't keep bashing yourself because, oh, woe is me, woe is me. I think what people are looking for, and I could be wrong, I'm going to throw to you both in a second. I think what employers are looking for now is that ability to get up and go, okay, this is it. I'm going to be flexible and adaptable. This is my proposal to you, employer. This is how I can present myself. This is what I can do for you. I'm not sure how that actually translates. I don't know, Brendan, is that something as an employer that you think that would appeal to you?
Yeah, it's one of the questions I ask. I go, tell me about JCE. And it puts the candidate on the spot straight away.
Yep,
the good ones
exactly.
who have done some background research can, and I'm only looking for someone who can rattle maybe a sentence off the website. Happy.
Yep.
And then I go, okay, so what value can you bring to us? And you've got the floor, away you go, so if you can explain the value that you can bring to the type of company it is. Like, we're a small business, but we operate in a medium business compliance level, right? So it's a different sort of ball game to a lot of other consultancies, and you wouldn't know that unless you ask the questions. And once you ask the questions, you understand that you then can actually articulate your value. Then you're putting your best foot forward. If the role aligns, then great. If they provide feedback like you're overqualified, or we think you're overqualified, me personally, I wouldn't be taking that feedback to, valuably. It's probably, if you can't be honest enough to tell me the reasons why, in terms of a candidate, then why would I value your opinion any more than that, but if you had 3 or 4 people coming back to you and saying the same thing, then maybe you go, okay, maybe there's a common denominator here. We need to look at some things and give it a bit of a tweak.
Yes, which is still taking, the onus is still on you. to do that evaluation and think about it. Like I said, I get that all the time. But I understand why I'm overqualified, because literally I am overqualified. I've lived a long time. I've done a lot of things, right? So I know that. But, a couple of years ago, somebody rang me about something and they went, I think you could probably be a bit overqualified. Well, yeah, because I'm normally working up here and this job was way down the bottom. But I said, look, what could I do for you in your organisation? Like, what are the things where I could help you? Because literally I have been in a horrendous role just prior to this, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to work in the team, for the team. And we came to an agreement about what I could do. I could, mentor, I could do. And I promise I'm not going to cause havoc and, do whatever it is, right? But it's about us evaluating it. The other thing that I saw from what you were saying, Brendan, is what sets us apart. What's the thing that makes us different to everybody else? And Cassandra, in terms of that, what sets people apart, is this a thing now that you think is going to help us future-proof our careers? Or is there some other way?
I think, Brendan, you are a lovely interviewer in that you directly ask them what value.
Yes.
That's what everybody who's interviewing for you is looking for, but they don't necessarily ask you directly, which is one of the nice things about working with direct people. That's the question. They're not waiting for it and trying to figure it out. But, other people who may not be such generous interviewers are looking for that, but they'll ask you, tell us about your experience, right? Yeah. It still needs to translate. How is this of value to me as the employer or the manager?
Yeah.
So that question is something that people have to ask themselves is, what do they contribute to? And this loops us back right into that strategic part, right, that we started off.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. What value did I create for other people? Or did I just do things like a monkey and I was told to do it, right? And I think that also gives people a little bit more control over their direction in their career and in their life. Because, when you know why you do things and what's important to you, right? Like, Susanne, you'd love to, cause trouble. You know that those are the jobs that appeal to you. That's where you're going to succeed. Yeah. That's where you're going to thrive. There's no point in taking a job that they're going to trim your wings and make you be something that you aren't going to enjoy and that you're not going to succeed in. So the interview is a two-way process, and people do forget that because, we feel the power dynamic of, well, I need a job versus they could, they don't necessarily have to hire anybody at all, right? So there's a little bit, as both of you have been saying, it's around being able to interview back and have it turn into a conversation and say, wait, I'm also evaluating you. Like, are you the right place for me? Are you going to give me the autonomy that I'm looking for? Some people don't want a lot of autonomy and some people do, right? So it's you have to know your value and you have to know what you want as well in order to make sure that match works for you. Otherwise, you're just going to be miserable.
It's like, and some of the things that I've heard you both saying, it's like the universe has been warning people over probably 15 or 20 years. Interviewers will ask, what's the value you're going to bring to us? They'll ask you this, they'll ask you that. And I don't think people have listened really to what's actually being asked of them. And now the future-proofing of your career is to take the very things that we've been hearing in a lot of these interviews. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, that really should translate to, this is what really makes me special and this is what really makes me valuable to your organisation. They've been saying it, but we haven't been listening and we haven't been turning the talk into what it actually means. What's your value? What are the things, what do they normally ask you? Where did you fail? Now, don't ask an autistic person like me, where did you fail? Because I'm going to say, well, I didn't fail. What's your criteria for failure? Do you know what I mean? Like, hello. So they've been saying this stuff in interviews for a long time, but we've not, as people being recruited, I don't know that we've listened. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that there's something, and it's not everybody, right? And this is what we tend to notice. The people who are sort of taking this on bit by bit, right? It's like a journey. If you've been taking small steps the whole entire time, you'll get there. And it looks from the outside that it was very smooth. But these people have just been doing the work. That's what we call it, doing the work incrementally. But it's very typical. And not to discredit anybody, like people are busy, they've got lives, they're busy with work, their bosses super demanding, they've got like kids and right, and life just got away from them, and they're just so used to just surviving and just getting through their day that they don't have that time to sit back and reflect, right? And now we have this whole demand of like our time via like all of these apps, that it's the attention economy. That's we're in this attention economy. Being able to stop, like not just listen to these things, it's the self-reflection of going, oh, wait, okay, I heard that tip. When am I going to give myself 20 minutes to think about it? And how it often happens is that, oh, when I got made redundant, when I lost my job, now I've got to think about it. And that's like saying, well, now you've got to do an intensive. Now you really have to do this because you haven't been working on it constantly. And this is where even if your organization doesn't really do very good performance reviews, right? That every quarter, every 6 months, every year, ask yourself, what have I done that I'm proud of? How have I grown, right? If your manager is a terrible person in terms of being able to do those performance review, don't do it for them. It shouldn't be for them. It should be for you. What have I, because nobody remembers, like, well, what did I do? I don't even remember what I did like 3 months ago, right? So doing that for yourself on a regular basis and remembering that you are worth it. So people feel like, oh, but it's like, hang on, wait, I'm valuing myself. I'm checking and making things to say, hey, wait, I'm worth this time. I'm worth this. I'm going to think about what value I bring to the people around me, right? And I can recognize my own achievements, even if my organization doesn't have a formal process to do it, right? And I think then, again, even if the process hasn't been run well, do it for yourself. It's the value is for you.
I think that's so important because, like you said, I am worth it. And it's only part of our life that is a job, Well, I've got a thing up here that says, we make a living by what we get, we make a life by what we give, right? So that's a pretty well known thing that sits on my wall all the time. So for me, it's not all about my work. I am not my work. That's just a thing. So what you're saying, I am worth it, to take that time. And part of that future proofing that I think we've been talking about is reflecting on, well, what is it about me that makes me special? What can I give rather than what can they give me? So it's really a change of mindset, because we so often hear people going, oh, they. No. It's about not just me. It's what it is that is my intrinsic value to myself and to life and to the business. So it's quite a bit more holistic. This is what I'm hearing, right? So we're going to start to wrap up now. If you're watching this, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic, because I like doing all of these. I'll do them anyway, so it won't matter. But it's nice. It's nice to be liked. Okay, so. Brendan, I'm going to come to you first. If we come out with maybe 3 to 5 things that future proofing is about, can you sort of articulate what they might be?
Only 3 to 5.
Oh,
you mean 35? No.
Yeah, whatever.
No, look, I think to me the diversification is a big one. So diversification, self-training. But just on the last point there that you were just talking about there, Suzanne, outside of work, give yourself a challenge. Give yourself a challenge and journal or record some steps along the way and see how you've reacted or felt through that process, because you're then going to learn about yourself. You can get some good points out of that, and you can go, well, here's an example of a challenge I faced, and this is how I worked through it. This is my personality. This is how I do things here. That will definitely emphasize your value to any sort of employer.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Nobody wants to be dragging people along. They want people that are proactive, and I would suggest probably fairly content in themselves or working towards that. I mean, it's difficult. Cassandra, can I ask you the same sort of question?
Yeah, I think one is assume things are going to change. And so therefore spend time to be aware of what's going on around you, whether that's economically, socially, within your organization, even within yourself, right? Like maybe you need something different in your career. Then I think it's that question of building resilience. And resilience isn't like career resilience. It is like you are either a resilient person or not. It's not like you only are resilient in one section in your life. You might just be practicing resilience in one part of your life at a time, hopefully.
Yeah.
And that getting uncomfortable. One of the advantages younger people tend to have is that they're used to learning, right? Like if you're, at school, you're used to learning your list. We get out of the habit of pushing ourselves to learn. We get more comfortable. We get our, car and our house and our stability. And then we get used to having more control. And when that's taken away from us, we get really thrown off. So actually, as Brendan was saying, putting yourself out into uncomfortable situations, pushing yourself so you're always trying something new, always learning, and just remembering and giving yourself that emotional experience of, oh, wait, I can do something. You don't have to do it now, but, I can do something I've never done before, pottery or something like that.
Exactly.
And I think the last one is really around that listening and paying attention to be able to connect and share what value you can bring to others. I think that's the thing that, you can add value. We are more than our job titles. People forget that, right? We're so used to, Cassandra, I'm an X, right? And then, when that title gets taken away, we're like, well, who are we? What do we bring, right?
Yes.
And if we know what value we bring to other people, then it really helps us understand what value we bring to the world.
Yeah. Look, I think that the two of you have summed that up really, really well. Thank you so much for all of that. It does seem that future-proofing your career is about future-proofing yourself and taking that that initiative yourself and not relying on others, but to really build and plan your own life and your own strategy. And part of that strategy, or part of your life, is a job. So, but it's not everything, right? So put it all into perspective. Again, if you're watching, please subscribe. The information will be in the description below. There's information about how to contact Cassandra and Brendan. There are people out there that can assist you if you need help in particular ways. There's a lot of great recruiter coaches and people like that. But reach out otherwise to me in my email, which will also be below. And thank you so much, Brendan and Cassandra. That was incredibly valuable, I think. And I hope that people get a lot out of it, because I certainly did. But other than that, to everybody and to yourself, have a great project day. Thank you so much. And for everyone, have a great holiday season, great Christmas. Thanks.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks,
Excellent.
Cassandra.
Thank you.